What's up, pretty people, party people, lovely people? It is I, your girl C. Michelle, Christian Michelle, and most recently, as of late, I go by UFO Mechanic 11. Um, and so I want to explain because obviously this is my title. I was gonna say stage name, but that's not accurate. So I guess the best way I would describe it is a title. And if you follow me in any of my other departments, any of my other socials, not just on YouTube, you'll see UFO Mechanic 11. Some of you have probably already guessed where the 11 comes from. Some of you probably don't even know. But just in case you're curious, if you stumbled on this channel, if you stumbled on me, if you like my title, my moniker, UFO Mechanic 11, let me explain what that means. Okay? Okay. Yeah? Say it with me now, children. Okay. I'm playing. Anyways, so I am by nature a writer. If you know anything about me as far as like my channel, I'm definitely an intellectual nerd. Not like a cultural nerd, but I'm an intellectual nerd. Definitely your research, dive deep kind of person. I'm also very inclined to study and understand astrology, to be more specific, like Vedic astrology. Tropical astrology is, to me, it's the surface level of what Vedic astrology is. No shade, no tea, none of that. That's just how I feel. So I like to get deeper than all of that. So Vedic astrology, um, I'm also quite esoteric, not by choice. It's something that kind of happened upon me when I went through, if you know what this means astrologically, when I went through my K2 Mahadasha. Um, if you don't know what that means astrologically, on the surface, that looked like joining the military, having mental health issues because of my time in the military, and having a suicide attempt. And I'm laughing because that suicide attempt was kind of really what further propelled me into the understanding or the other side, if you know what I'm saying. Sometimes people have near death experiences and they wake up and start having some unexplainable understandings or experiences. So it's the best way I can explain that. For me personally, it's always something that's been there when I really think about it. I was always a kid with a huge imagination. I was the kid that had imaginary friends. The thing is, I knew they weren't real. I knew these weren't real people. I just knew that I could very easily have conversations with my imagination. Um, I was the kid that had very specific dreams. I was, and then you don't think too much about this. I grew up in a religious household. I grew up apostolic Pentecostal, which is like Southern Baptist, but a little bit more strict, or maybe more strict in the sense that I feel like sometimes Southern Baptists will be strict, but they don't necessarily follow some of the strict rules of the Bible. They're just strict on their own terms. Apostolic Pentecostal is like Bible strict. Um, so I'm sorry, I'm looking at my pets. They're doing something. Anyways, that's a little bit about me, a little bit about how my mind works. So now, as an adult, 30 years old, I have a pretty expanded mind. I've always been highly intelligent. I graduated top 10% of my high school. I went to University of Texas here in. I went to the University of Texas in Austin. I'm not in Austin no more, but UT, go Longhorns, pretty big school. So book smart, and now I'm becoming more like esoterically inclined. Uh, so to explain the title UFO Mechanic, because that's what it is. My name is Christian. My birth given name, my parents literally named me Christian, and Michelle's my middle name. But my name, even of itself, Christian Michelle, if you go like into what is that called? I don't know why the word is like slipping my mind, but when you break down when you break down words into like their meanings, I forgot what that's called. Anyway, my name, it's Christian, is a follower of Christ. Um, that's what it means on the surface, but if you actually break down the name, it means anointed or anointed one, because Christ, the Christos, which the Christos is the same as saying Christian, the anointed one. And then Michelle, is he who is like God, but obviously since Michelle is not Michael, because Michael is the actual word, Michelle would be she who is like God. So the anointed one who is like God is literally pretty much what my parents named me. And they didn't even mean for it to come out that way. I mean, Christian, yes, but Michelle was because my dad's name was Michael. So it just came out kind of esoteric on its own. Um, so for a while, I've always just gone with, C Michelle, Christian Michelle. Not that I even fully understood what that code means. And I say code because anybody's name is a code in and of itself. Like when somebody, if your name is Joseph, and if every time somebody says your name, Joseph, hey Joseph, what are you doing? Hey Joseph, what are you gonna eat? Hey Joseph. Anytime somebody uses your name, they're saying a code to you. And so when your parents, and if you as an adult have children, when you're naming your children, understand that the name you give them is on a esoteric spiritual level in the heavens, if you will. That is a code that you are speaking over their lives constantly. This is why, obviously, when you name children, you want to have good intentions. You don't want to name your child after your dad and you don't like your dad. Like if your dad's name is, I don't know, Bob, but you can't stand your dad, but you always wish he was more in your life, and like secretly you have like a trauma attachment to your dad and his lack of presence in your life. Like some people will literally name their kids after their fathers, but they don't actually really see their father as this great man. It's almost like they had this kid and was trying to turn their kid into the version of their father that they wish they had. And it's like that's not what's going to happen there. What it is that you're setting your kid up to start off like he's starting off the race, 5 seconds behind because you named him after somebody whose code has been in your lineage has been just kind of like degenerate. You know what I'm saying? So you don't want to just name your kid anything. You surely don't want to name your kid after just any old body, whether that's a family member, a celebrity, anything. Like, be specific. You know what I mean? Because that's people are gonna say that code to them. It's like a program. Anytime somebody says, "Hey, Christian," to me, I feel it. Like it's like when it's different when somebody's like, "Hey, babe," but when they say, "Hey, Christian," you feel that it's your name, it's your code. It's if you think about a computer, whenever like a programmer creates a character, that character has a code. So now whenever they need to go back and implement that character into this particular area of the game, they just type in the character's code and that character generates there. So be careful with the names that you name your children. And now getting back to my title, be careful with the titles that you take on because those too can become names for you. Now nobody goes around calling me UFO Mechanic 11. Nobody does that. Um, that's just something that I see for myself, and I chose it for these very reasons. On an esoteric level, on a metaphysical level, like surface level, a UFO is an unidentified flying object. But on the esoteric level, when you think about the soul, when it incarnates, when God sends down a soul to incarnate into a baby, even an animal, whatever, a plant, when God sends down an aspect of himself, which is soul, when Source, God, Creator, sends down an aspect of himself, which is that beaming glow, a soul, that thing that gives you not just life, like not just like everything life wise, but that thing that gives you conscience and connection to the higher power. So if you come across somebody that doesn't have a connection or consciousness to higher power, like not like oh they don't understand it or they don't really know what it is, but sometimes well maybe you don't know, but if you're intuitive enough, sometimes you can come across people and you can just tell like they're not in control of their body, like something about them is missing. they have lost connection with their soul. In a sense, that body is like on autopilot. That's what they call NPCs. You know what I mean? Though that body's just on autopilot. The soul is either on vacation, it went back to heaven, maybe they sold their soul. I don't know. Either way, it dipped. So they just walking around, you know, on autopilot. Which is how a lot of babies are until they gain consciousness. Like a lot of babies, infants, they're on autopilot, you know. And then when they get to that whatever age they're supposed to get to obtain consciousness, suddenly they get a conscious and they're like, wait a minute. You know, all their friends are still on autopilot. You know what I mean? Beautiful thing, right? Um, so the body, the human experience, the 3D experience, let me be more specific. The 3D experience, because we're talking about 3D frequency, there's all these other frequencies, you know, 5D, 2D, whatever. So the 3D experience, our 3D frequency, even though on the outside it's 3D, I think humanity is kind of like in a 4D frequency at this point because everybody's intuition is kind of elevated thanks to what well people say thanks to age of Aquarius and a lot of other things happening astrologically, right? So maybe we'll say this 4D body, this 4D frequency. Point is that this experience that we can see, that we process with our brain, this experience is somewhat of a separate experience from the actual soul, right? This is a fictitious, fanciful world. Not saying that you're not here. You are here for a reason. So you need to, even in fantasy, make something of it, whatever is your destiny, because this will impact on your next incarnations, right? The soul, for only reasons that God understands, has incarnations it needs to go through. So on a 3D frequency, as humans or animals, anything you can see physically on this 3D frequency, and even see with your third eye, going back to that intuition 4D frequency, that this is something that your soul is learning. When the soul comes down and incarnates into a 3D, 4D frequency, it is learning about that frequency. It doesn't come down here, obviously, knowing it all, because any soul that comes down that separates and it's not separating itself. Any soul that God pushes out of itself and sends down to have an experience, an incarnation, it is on a journey. So there are things it does not understand. So when the soul comes down, we'll keep it simple. When the soul comes down and incarnates into this 3D/4D frequency, the physical body, my body, this body that my parents have named Christian Michelle, this body is an unidentified object to my soul. The soul, which lives inside of the body, um, soul could be synonymous with subconscious, but also these days consciousness, because they are now crossing paths. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. um, but the soul is coming down to have an experience, aka it's having a journey, aka it's in class. Class is in session. And so you're never having a, not never, but quite often when you're in class for anything, you're learning. Like if you're not learning, you're literally just in a building. You're not really in class. Like class is for learning. So I mean, you're in somebody's class, but doesn't mean you're actually having class. Because if you go and you're learning 2 + 2 = 4, I'm sure that day you're not learning anything. You already know that. You already know 2 + 2 = 4. So you're not really in class. You're just hanging out, right? So anybody that's in class is learning. When a soul comes down and to experience and to incarnate into this experience, um, however it is drafted, like, and obviously our souls incarnate into this frequency more than once. That's why we all have a different path, because whatever incarnation your soul had prior to, um, and by understand that when I say your soul, like you gotta understand when these two come together. Sorry, when these two come together, it becomes one. It's a partnership. So right now I'm speaking to your physical body, so that hoping that your soul will pick up what I'm saying. Because sometimes people may listen to something that they don't understand or they're not prepared for. And so it's like speaking in another language to somebody. And they're like, context clues can help them understand. But in reality, I could be speaking Spanish and you only speak German. But it's like, how do you understand the little bit I'm saying to you, right? Context clues. So context clues is for the soul. So, um, and what I'm trying to say is like when your soul, so you, I'm speaking to you in a different language right now, you could say. While you're trying to make sense of what I'm saying, allow the context clues to fill in what I'm saying, because I'm really trying to say the context clues. You just don't understand what I'm saying. Let your soul understand. It'll be easier. When the soul comes down to incarnate into an experience, God ordained experience, God allowed experience, that soul is on a journey. It is in a classroom. It is learning. So when your soul comes down and enters into the baby's body, that body is an unidentified flying object. You know, it's an unidentified object to the soul. This is obviously a play on words here. Like, I'm using basic, basic pop culture language. Like UFO, not even pop culture, but it's popular right now because of the whole alien thing. But um, I'm using pop culture language to make sense of something deeper. So, the soul comes into contact, it comes down and it is assigned to the body. The soul is assigned to the body. What is happening is the soul, which is, and this is why the soul is the real entity. It goes to the general. So picture this: we're in a hangar, an aircraft hangar, but it's a spacecraft hangar. Okay, it's a spacecraft hangar, and picture this in the heavens. Whatever that may look like for you, inside of the spacecraft hangar, where every soul is getting prepared to be deployed. All the souls are prepared to be deployed to on their mission, right? What it is that God, He's like, all right, you soul, and what is this soul's name? Don't know. That's as a human being, I can't fully explain the ins and outs of the soul. I didn't incarnate to understand the soul. The soul incarnated to understand humanity. So, no, stay in your lane, right? But God goes to the soul and he's like, hey, soul, all right, so you're being assigned to aircraft Christian Michelle Franklin. That's me. And so that's the spaceship you're being assigned to. And so the soul is like, oh, I'm being assigned to this spacecraft. He obviously is going to need to live and experience through that spacecraft. Anybody that is anybody that is using a tool to traverse, they need to maintain that tool. That's where the mechanic comes into play. The soul is an aircraft mechanic. The soul is a UFO mechanic. And I didn't want to go with aircraft because aircraft is like you can study it and study and study it, and at some point you will know the ins and outs of an aircraft. But that's not the point of a soul incarnating. The soul isn't incarnating with like the soul doesn't incarnate with the same body that doesn't change. If you build a plane, that plane stays the same. Even if you add a modification on it, that's the modification. It is what it is. You can learn it, you can perfect it. I guess kind of in a sense it's the same. But the thing about with humans, with our human body, it's constantly changing. Every time a cell dies and regenerates on itself, every time all the little germs on our face have a meeting together and they're upset and you get acne. You know what I mean? The body as itself, the body is earth. The body is a aspect of earth. Like, like just like how you can go out and pollute earth. Like if you go out and throw stuff into the ocean, you're polluting earth. When you go out and you drink soda, you're polluting your body. Your body is earth to something. Your body is earth to the germs that live on your face, that live in your hands, that live in your body, your cells. Your body is an earth, right? And so the earth is constantly changing. The earth, as well as you, your body is constantly changing. It is a machine that is always evolving and changing, evolving, devolving, whatever. It's always changing. And so it is an unidentified object to the soul. The soul is trying to understand it. Therefore, I don't liken it to an aircraft because an aircraft it can get pretty simplistic in the sense, not obviously like this is rocket science, people, so not that simplistic, but it can be simplistic in a sense that you can learn it and figure it out. Granted, a soul does come to learn and figure out the body. But to be honest, when the soul figures out, understands the body quite quickly, that's when you get people that die young. Because there's a purpose to this. The soul is here to learn something. So the minute the soul's mission is done is the minute you die, is the minute it's over. And if you don't die, that's when you start getting into things like dementia. Like, okay, the soul starts going on vacation, you come back, check back in on you. The soul starts leaving, because as it learns more about you, you start separating from yourself. Like as the soul learns more about its spacecraft, it spends less time with it, because just like if you're doing routine maintenance on an aircraft, if the mechanic does routine maintenance on the aircraft, at some point it doesn't need to check its systems as frequently because it knows its ship. But when the mechanic is not frequently checking in on the ship, anything could happen. But as it starts checking on it less, the ship is getting less love. And no matter how much you don't want to believe that inanimate objects don't have a sense of feeling, inanimate objects give off a frequency just like you do. You want to know why? Because if you think about like this cup right here, this cup has a chemical code. This cup's chemistry, this is a plastic cup. Plastic it's on the alchemical chart. Like plastic is a code. It's chemistry. And so every aspect that makes up plastic has a frequency to itself. So even doing this, that hit that I just did on that cup is vibrating throughout the cup. Now it may not feel it like a human feels it, like a dog feels it, like it may not feel it like a plant feels it, but it feels it. It feels this in its own way. It's the same thing like while, like the china cabinet that nobody ever goes into except for on holidays. How come whenever you open up the china cabinet, it's dusty? How did dust get into a closed cabinet? Because it's alive. It's alive. Maybe not in the way that you would think, but it's alive. So, saying that to say, when the mechanic starts spending less time with its aircraft or its unidentified aircraft, its unidentified object, it starts deteriorating. And the mechanic will only spend less time with something it already knows. So once the mechanic gets to a place to where he starts understanding its product and he spends less time with it, then the body, aka, well, the body will start to die, but by die we mean transform. What that means is that the purpose changes, the mission changes, because death is real only up until that legacy stops. Death is the process of which that story ended, but it literally a whole new story happens again. So UFO Mechanic is my soul is having a connection with its aircraft, and my soul and your soul, everyone's soul, is on a daily grind of maintaining, because it's a mechanic, of maintaining, upgrading, reevaluating its unidentified object until the object becomes identified. And the minute the object becomes identified, the minute the research is completed, it's done. So my title, UFO Mechanic 11, that is me allowing my soul to speak for itself. And my soul is saying to the world that he or she, it, both, is a mechanic of an unidentified flying object. Not just my soul, but all of our souls. All of our souls are mechanics of unidentified flying objects. So a UFO mechanic, and this is why I get the 11 part. A UFO mechanic with mission 11, and mission 11 comes from the science of numerology. The day that I was born adds up to the number 11. My life path, I'm a life path 11. And as a life path 11, I feel like that is the course of my soul's mission. So my soul said to me, and so I shared with the world, hoping that other people can better understand aspects of themselves. Sometimes the mechanic doesn't have a good understanding of the body. And that can create a lot of internal turmoil. Give it time, the mechanic gets better at understanding its unidentified object. And as the mechanic, which is the real you, as your soul understands its experience, its 3D frequency, its body, as your soul understands the fact that it's black and not white, the fact that it, speaks English and not French, as the soul understands its spacecraft better, they will be a better mechanic. And once they're the best mechanic, the mission will be done. Once they're the best mechanic, it'll be over. So give it time. Time heals all. If you're feeling lost or confused, or you're like, I don't know what's going on, give your soul time to understand yourself. And you, speaking to your body, you as the body, be open to your soul exploring itself. Be open to it. Try to remember that the soul is having a human experience. You cannot pigeonhole yourself to materialism because the soul isn't materialistic. But you can't pigeon yourself to spiritualism. You can't be too spiritual because the body is not spiritual. Allow these two to work together. Allow the mechanic to understand the body. Allow the mechanic to understand the UFO. So, UFO mechanic. When this is my soul speaking, I am a UFO mechanic with Mission 11. What are you? Who are you?